And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, February 27th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat. If you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast, it makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we are going to start off the show. We're going to take a look at the NFL report card grades, the NFL Players Association report card grades for each team. What were some of my takeaways from it, the biggest surprises to come out of it, and all that. So we'll get into that in just a second. We'll also talk about the Detroit Pistons, as they have now won 8 straight games. They defeated the Celtics last night in a 20-point win. So we'll talk about that and some of the other NBA action as well, including the Knicks winning a nail-biter against the 76ers. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into talking about Matthew Stafford more. It's becoming more like the Brandon Ayuk situation from last year, where we're just constantly talking about it. But a couple of things I wanted to get into. The Raiders, supposedly Tom Brady, is really making a push to try to get Stafford. And, from what we're hearing at the Combine, according to reports, Matthew Stafford is a top priority for the Giants. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about what teams in Major League Baseball are primed to bounce back in 2025. And then in the final part of the show, I will continue my season overviews for every team in the NFL, and we will be talking about the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles and, go over their season and what lies ahead in the offseason. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the report card grades around the NFL. So I believe we talked a little bit about this last year when I was doing the football podcast, but there are some things that I wanted to get into. There were some teams that made major strides from last year to now. In 2024, so these are a few teams. So the Chargers, they jumped from 30th in the NFL last year to 5th. The Falcons improved from 25th to 3rd. The Commanders jumped from 32nd to 11th. For the second straight year, the Dolphins and the Vikings ranked 1st and 2nd among the teams. And you also had the Raiders that were up there in the top 5. Last season, it was the Dolphins, the Vikings, the Packers, the Eagles, and the Jaguars. They received the highest overall grades from players. Now, I wanted to talk about a few things. First of all, one of my biggest takeaways is the owner grades. So there was an owner that did get an F, and that was Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson received the worst grade out of any owner in the NFL. And, players saying he does not contribute to a positive team culture. And also, J.C. Treader, who's part of this process, he basically said that the Jets have a culture of fear. I think that's how it was put. And this year, or should I say last year, was really eye-opening for me when it came to the Jets, and how eye-opening it was that Woody Johnson, he is not looked at in a favorable light. With all the stuff all the reports that were coming out throughout the year with, Madden ratings, and, he wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers after a Week 4 loss to the Broncos, firing Robert Saleh in the middle of the year, which at the time I was on board with that, but look at how things turned out afterwards. There's a lot of things that you looked at when it came to the Jets, and Woody Johnson was at the forefront of it. And he got the worst grade. Now, you had some other owners that, graded low as well. David Tepper of the Panthers, he got a D-. The Cardinals owner got a D-. Robert Kraft also got a D. And same with the Steelers as well. Robert Kraft, it was interesting what was said about him in the report. If I could pull it up while I'm talking here. But, when you look at the Patriots, they were successful for so long. And, now with these report card grades coming out, it's just eye-opening when you see that Robert Kraft gets a D like that. And, to kind of look at it more specifically, so Patriots were ranked 31st among teams. So ownership, 29th, that was their ranking. So Robert Kraft's average rating for perceived willingness to invest in the facilities was a 6.15 out of 10 from Patriots players, a ranking of 28 out of 32 owners in the league. And when you think of Robert Kraft, you think of all the Super Bowls that they won. But since then, not so much. The players feel that Kraft slightly contributes to a positive team culture, a rank of 30 out of 32 owners. And the players feel that Kraft is somewhat committed to building a competitive team, a rank of 30 of the 32 NFL owners. And for head coach, Gerard Mayo got a B+. 93% of players feel that former head coach Gerard Mayo was efficient with their time, a rank of 20 out of 32. The players felt that Mayo was moderately receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs, ranking him 19 of 32 head coaches in the league. I apologize if you hear my dog barking in the background, but it happens. But yeah, the Patriots, they did not receive a great rating. They were 31st out of 32 teams. Now, you figure with Mike Vrabel coming in, and maybe with how they graded, you would think that this would change. But, a lot of it has to do with ownership, and Robert Kraft has to change some things up. So then I wanted to look at the rest of the ratings here. But, yeah, the Dolphins, they got all A's. And the Vikings, they were right behind them. And when you look at now I wanted to take a look at the head coaches as well. So Dan Quinn was number one. And that's very impressive. The Commanders, they made a huge jump. I talked about it before. Another way of the Commanders to stick it to me for not, ranking them, giving them a good ranking last year when I was predicting their season and how they were going to go. But, I mean, look, I have, admitted I was wrong plenty of times. And he got a full 100% of his players feeling he was efficient with their time. They also ranked him first in the league in terms of being receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs. That's very important when it comes to being a head coach. And you see how the Commanders did. They really turned things around. And it's not even just on the field. It's off the field as well. They went through a lot of changes. Ownership down. And they're going to be a good team for a while. And also other coaches that received A+ as well. You had Raheem Morris. He received an A+. And it's interesting because I did think about this. What would Bill Belichick have gotten had he taken the job for the Falcons? Now, I heard, when I was watching the Rich Eisen show, they had Chris Russo on, and, he talked about the Falcons and how, they kind of made a mistake not hiring Belichick. And right now, I think it's too soon to tell. Because I think had the Falcons gotten better quarterback play, they'd probably make the playoffs. They were, what were they, 6-3? And then Kirk Cousins just, I don't know what happened. He wasn't playing well. And they missed the playoffs. And maybe if they would have went to Michael Penix sooner, maybe they would have gotten in. Now, they still had a chance to. Last week of the season, they still had a chance to. But they ended up losing to the Panthers, and the Bucs ended up coming back against the Saints and winning that game. But, that's still good though. That Raheem Morris was able to get an A+. The players love him, and going into next year, full year Michael Penix. Let's see what the Falcons got. Kevin O'Connell got an A+. Andy Reid got an A+. Dan Campbell got an A+. Mike McDaniel again gets an A+. A lot of A's. Jonathan Gannon an A. Mike Tomlin an A. Zach Taylor an A. Shane Steichen, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay. I would have thought McVay would get an A+. Mike McDonald. Mike McCarthy even got an A. And you could see, towards the end of the year, the Cowboys really were playing hard for McCarthy. They were. They beat the Buccaneers, they beat the Commanders, and this is with all the injuries that they were dealing with. But I don't want to go through all of them. But the lowest ratings for head coaches, you had the Browns got a C. So Kevin Stefanski, who won Coach of the Year in 2023, he ends up getting a C. Doug Peterson got a C, and Matt Eberflus got a C. But there was nothing lower than that. And another surprise, some teams got Fs when it came to traveling. Like the Eagles, they just won the Super Bowl, and they got an F for traveling. Patriots got an F. And the Bills got an F-. So they got to work on that. But that's really all I wanted to get into. I could definitely go into more depth in the coming weeks, but the main things I wanted to touch upon was, Robert Kraft getting a low grade and Woody Johnson just getting a straight up F for ownership. And but let me know what you guys think. If you were able to take a look at it, you could go on the NFL Players Association website and they have all the grades. I mean, because we could break this down and be talking for hours, but, we don't have that much time. So, but let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will talk about the Detroit Pistons knocking off the Celtics last night. They have now won 8 straight, so we'll get into that and some of the other NBA action from last night as well. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to now talk about the Pistons extending their winning streak to 8 games after defeating the Celtics last night, 117 to 197. And, this is something that I really wasn't planning on talking about, but, this, as the night went on and you kind of hear what's going on, and obviously, now doing all sports, there's certain nights where you got to, get more creative. We can't just, zero in on football every night. But, this was a big game for the Pistons. And, I was like, if they win this game, I want to talk about it. And they did. And the Celtics had a winning streak going for themselves. I think it was at Is at 6 games. And the Pistons were able to knock them off. Now, the Celtics were not at full strength last night. They did not have Jaylen Brown, but they still pretty much had their full cast. You had Jason Tatum, who, of course, it seems like he has a big game every single night. And, Kristaps Porzingis and Horford and Devin White and Drew Holiday. And Jaylen Brown is, a top 2 player on this team. So had he played, who knows what would happen. But you got to give the Pistons a lot of credit. And they've turned it around. And it's amazing because, I forgot about this, but last year, they had that long losing streak, I think, of 28 straight games. And, now you fast forward to this year. I mean, what a difference. What a difference a year makes for this team. And right now, when you look at the Eastern Conference, they are sitting at, I think they're at the 5th seed at the moment? So they are currently, oh no, they're the 6th seed. They're behind the Bucks. Well, they're tied with the Bucks. Now, they could do more damage and they could maybe get themselves to as much as the 4th seed. But either way, the way the Pistons have been, you got to love what you're seeing from them, especially if you're a Pistons fan. And, I went back and looked at their records year by year. They haven't finished over 500. You'd have to go all the way back to the 2015-2016 season. They were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and they got swept. And then the last time they made the postseason was the 2018-2019 season, and they finished at exactly 500, 41-41, and they got swept that year too. I think they got swept by the Bucks, and then when they finished over 500, they got swept by the Cavs. And then since then, 20-46 the following season, 20-52, 23-59, 17-65, and then last year they finished 14-68. A winning percentage of 171. And look where they are now. 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, 33-26. Things are looking good for them right now. Last night you got a big performance out of Malik Beasley, who is a 6th Man of the Year candidate, I believe. He's averaging 16.7 points. He went 10 of 15 from the field, and he went 6-11 from 3. And then, of course, really the driving force of this team, and a player that one of my friends loves, and that's Cade Cunningham. 25.7 points per game, 9.5 assists, 6.3 rebounds. Last night, 21 points, went 9 of 21 shooting. And then, Tobias Harris, who was a newly acquired player, 16 points last night. And, it wasn't looking good at the half because the Celtics, do what the Celtics always do, and that's hit a ton of threes. I got to go back and look, but they hit a ton of threes towards the end of the first half. Every single basket that they made was a three-pointer. And that's what they do. And, the Knicks, we'll talk about them in a second, but they know a thing or two about, the Celtics, shooting a barrage of threes against them. And, it didn't matter. The Pistons actually opened up the second half. They went on an 8-0 run. So that put them up by, actually no, that was to open up the fourth quarter. I apologize. So that, that was big. Every time the Celtics, looked like they were going to, take control of this game, the Pistons were like, no, that's not going to happen. And they ended up getting the win. And, the winning streak, is definitely impressive. And, they got another tall order, I believe, tomorrow when they take on the Nuggets. So, they're going to be put to the test. Are they going to be able to knock off the Nuggets? We'll see. But, I mean, the Celtics, they're the defending champs. And, in terms of, what this means going forward, it is one game. But I think it's a pretty big deal. I think this is a big deal for the Pistons and just what they've gone through these last several years, and now that they seem like they're turning the corner. So, and I'm not saying this team is going to go on a run in the postseason, because I do think the Celtics are on their way to getting back to the finals. I think that's how it looks. I think Cleveland has the best chance to knock them off out of all the teams in the Eastern Conference, but I think ultimately the Celtics are going to get back. So if, let's say, the Celtics match up with the Pistons in a 7-game series, you're going to take the Celtics. But got to give the Pistons respect, though. They're playing good basketball, and let's see how long this winning streak can continue. So, like I said, they do play the Nuggets. Now, after that, if they could somehow get past the Nuggets, win that game, and that's at home, so that's big. But if you can knock off the Nuggets, then the schedule kind of lightens up a bit, because then you got the Nets, and then you got the Jazz after that. But then you have the Clippers and the Warriors, and those are both out west. So, and the Warriors are playing really well. The Clippers, they won last night. They won a close game against the Bulls, but they actually lost to the Pistons. They've been a part of the Pistons' winning streak. But yeah, the Warriors have been playing really well. They've only lost once since acquiring Jimmy Butler, so that's going to be a tough game. But then you got the Trailblazers, the Wizards twice, and then you got the Thunder after that. So there are winnable games coming up. But let's see, how long this can last. Now, I say that, and it could end tomorrow. But either way, though, this team is primed to make the playoffs. And right now, they would match up against the Knicks. And, the Knicks, they won last night, but I don't really trust them right now. So let's talk about the Knicks, though. We'll get into some of the other NBA action here. So the Knicks, I don't know what it is lately. It's just they got blown out by the Cavs and the Celtics. And then, against the Bulls and the Hawks, and now against the 76ers, they're winning these nail-biting games. And, the Knicks had control of this game, but then, Paul George, he put together a good game last night. He finished with 25 points. The 76ers at one point in the fourth quarter, they took the lead. But the Knicks battled back. Tyrese Maxey, who destroys the Knicks, he had 30 points. But I didn't even realize this. He went 0 for 10 from 3. I did not realize that. Because I had one eye on the game, and I was, I was working last night, so I wasn't fully locked in. But I did not realize he went 0 for 10 from 3. And then you had Kelly Oubre. He had 27 points. Valiant effort from the Sixers, but they did come up short. And towards the end of the game, Maxey missed a 3, and then Jalen Brunson clutch 3, put them up 105 to 102, and it rattled in. It looked like it was gonna come back out, but it rattled in, and that put them up. A key block from Precious Achiuwa on Andre Drummond late in the game. And the other thing too is for the Knicks, they didn't have Karl Anthony Towns last night. And we talked about guys that need to step up. Now, Josh Hart didn't have a great game in terms of scoring, but he did have 17 rebounds. He's a rebound machine. But from the guys that we talked about that need to step up, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Bridges went 12 of 18, 3 for 5 from 3. He had 28 points. And then OG Anunoby, not a great shooting night, 5 for 15, 1 for 6 from 3, but he did have 16 points and 9 rebounds. Precious Achiuwa, 7 points off the bench. Deuce McBride, 6 points off the bench. Cameron Payne had 4 off the bench. So, like I said, no Karl Anthony Towns last night, but they were able to get the win. And Brunson, of course, spectacular, 34 points, 8 of 17 shooting. So, they're going to get Towns back. You're going to get Mitchell Robinson back. And, let's see what happens. They'll be playing the Grizzlies next. That's tomorrow, and that's at MSG. Oh, nope, that's not at MSG. That's the channel it's going to be on. It's going to be in Memphis. So, you got the Grizzlies, then you got the Heat, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Clippers. Yeah, there's some tough games coming up for the Knicks on the schedule, and we'll see how they fare. But they're third in the Eastern Conference, and one of the podcasts that I do listen to from time to time. Look, the Knicks, they're going to win about 50 games this year. And if you were to go back to a few years ago when this team, or a little more than a few years ago, when this team was not good at all, was one of the worst in the league, and you heard the Knicks are going to win about 50 games in 2024, or the 2024-2025 season, you'll take that. You can't really, discount it. But we also have to acknowledge that this team needs to play better, especially against the better teams. And, we'll see how much of a difference Mitchell Robinson will play when he comes back, or will make when he comes back. But they do have some work to do. They're still in striking distance for the 2 seed. I don't think they're going to catch the Celtics. I think the Knicks are going to ultimately take the 3 seed. And right now, it looks like they could either play against the Bucks or the Pistons. Or the Pacers. Depending on what happens this final month or so. But I also wanted to bring up quickly the ending to the Maryland-Michigan State game last night. A little college basketball action. So, Maryland lost a heartbreaker. And it was on almost a full court shot at the end of the game to lose the game for Maryland. They ended up losing to Michigan State. I think the final was 58 to 50. Yeah, 58 to 55. They ended up losing at the buzzer. Very last shot of the game. And if you see the play, you got to look it up. I mean, it was just no time left, and it was a heave by Trey Hollerman. 1 second left, just chucks up pretty much a full court shot to win the game, and Maryland ends up losing a heartbreaker. That's a bit, that's a little Big Ten action last night. Right now Maryland in the Big Ten, they're 4th. Michigan State is 1st, and you got Michigan and Wisconsin 2nd and 3rd place. March Madness is coming up, and I can't wait. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So, before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Matthew Stafford and, a couple things, a couple teams that are interested in him. I know we did that earlier in the week, but I wanted to get into these 2 teams specifically, the Giants and the Raiders, from the news that we are hearing. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about Matthew Stafford, more about Matthew Stafford, and I wanted to get into a couple of teams that, want him and are trying to make a push for him, making him a priority. So we'll start off with the Raiders. So it is being reported that Tom Brady wants Matthew Stafford, and the Rams, of course, if things don't work out with figuring out a new contract, he has been given permission to, talk to other teams by the Rams, and the Raiders could possibly be a destination, and Tom Brady wants Matthew Stafford. And if you recall, if you watched Pete Carroll's press conference, he talked about how, he doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, or doesn't want to do a rebuild. He wants to get this up and going very quickly and be as competitive as next year. And if they were to acquire Matthew Stafford, that would definitely help accelerate the process. Now, the Raiders right now, they do have a lot of work to do besides quarterback. Now, that is a big part. And Stafford would be an instant upgrade over what they've had over the years. Well, in recent years. To be honest, Derek Carr should still be there, but that's a story for a different day. But anyways, with Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell, and then last year you had Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. And not to say that Aiden O'Connell, didn't do a nice job when he's filled in. Aiden O'Connell has won games, but Aiden O'Connell is not the franchise quarterback for the Raiders. Now, I'm not saying that Matthew Stafford's going to come in and he's the franchise guy. Well, you need to go out and draft a young quarterback. You need someone to sit behind Stafford because, Stafford's not going to be playing for that much longer. But that's something that the Raiders would have to also do if they were to trade for Stafford. And, it would be a good spot for Stafford because you pair him with Pete Carroll and, you're still out west. And, the weather's not really going to be a factor. So that could work. But the problem is, you got Brock Bowers and, receivers. Jacoby Myers was good last year. Trey Tucker, he flashed ability here and there. They were not good at running the football, so that's something they definitely need to improve on. And you got to make sure that this offensive line is stable because you don't want Stafford coming in behind a makeshift offensive line and, then he ends up getting hurt. And on the defensive side of the ball, that needs a little bit of work as well. I mean, you got Max Crosby, but again, needs some work. But I think Pete Carroll in year one, he will definitely, turn this team around. Not saying that this team is going to make the playoffs or anything. First we got to see what they do. But I do think that we will see improvement from the Raiders. And to bring up their report card grade, like I said, they finished in the top 5. They were 4th out of 32 teams, which is very impressive. Now, players have identified scheduling and time management as key areas for improvement, presenting an opportunity for new head coach Pete Carroll to address next season. So we'll see if they do that. But surprisingly for the Raiders, head coach got an A minus. 87% of players felt that Antonio Pierce was efficient with their time, and the players felt that Pierce was highly receptive to locker room feedback on the team's needs. So, I mean, it's good to know that Antonio Pierce was that kind of coach. It's just unfortunate that, the results didn't show on the field. And ownership got an A. So, it's talking about Mark Davis here, but, Tom Brady is really putting his fingerprints on this team. And, the Raiders, I think they're going to turn it around. They're going to turn it around. With Brady and Pete Carroll, they should be able to figure it out. But, when you look at this report card grade, you could say, well, if the Raiders get Stafford, combined with that, there's going to be players that are going to say, you know what, I want to go play for the Raiders. I like what they're building over there. There's going to be some restructuring that they're going to have to do with the salary cap, with some contracts. Because Christian Wilkins Right now, he makes the most money, $33 million. I think that there should be some kind of restructuring in order with that contract. Max Crosby is the next highest player with $27 million. I would assume that some of these players that we look at are not going to be on the team next year. I mean, not saying Max Crosby, but Gardner Minshew, is he still going to be a part of this team? There's not really a lot of players that are making that much money. Because after Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, you got Colton Miller, who's making over $15 million. You got Jacoby Myers, who's making around $15 million. Gardner Minshew is making exactly $14 million. And then the next highest player is Andre James, who's making almost $9 million. That's his cap hit. And the Raiders actually do have almost $100 million in cap space. So, they got money to play with. And, we'll see what they end up doing in the draft. Got a top 10 pick. So, where are they picking right now? They're picking at, what are they picking at? They're picking at 5, I think. Nope, that's the NBA draft. I don't know why that came up. Had to go to good old Tankathon. Oh, no, they're picking at 6. And actually, I wanted to bring this up, though, but Abdul Carter, who's looked at as a top 3 pick out of Penn State, dealing with a bit of a foot injury, a stress reaction in his right foot. And he might not, who knows if he gets surgery or not, but that could hurt his draft positioning. He could potentially end up falling in the draft. I don't know if the Raiders are going to, I don't know what the Raiders are going to do at 6. They could, trade up or trade down. We'll see. I mean, if you draft Abdul Carter, you're pairing him with Max Crosby, so that would be good. Improve your defensive line even more. But, they could do that. They could go with defensive tackle. I mean, maybe if Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward ends up falling, maybe they take a young quarterback to sit behind Stafford. Or maybe you take best player available. Maybe you take a Tetairoa McMillan if he falls to you. Because right now, I mean, Jacoby Myers, like I said, is good. But I think you need another receiver. And they definitely need a running back. I mean, or maybe they take Ashton Genty. Or maybe they wait. Take a running. I could definitely see the Raiders taking a running back in this draft. I don't know if they're going to do it with the 7th pick, but we'll see. So, yeah, that's on the Raiders side. Could the Raiders move for Stafford? Would that work? I think so, because you got Tom Brady and Pete Carroll over there. And, the weather's not a factor, like I said. The division is a gauntlet, though. And the conference is a gauntlet. The NFC, if I'm Stafford, I'm trying to stay. Well, first of all, he's staying with the Rams. I'm getting that out of the way. Well, I keep saying that. But you go to the AFC, and specifically the AFC West, it's a tough division. Because the Raiders were the only team from that division that didn't even make the playoffs. And then to talk about the Giants. So the Giants, supposedly from what we're hearing out of the Combine, they are making it a priority to acquire Stafford. And it's a little bit different. The Raiders, they're starting with their new regime. The Giants, the regime that they have right now is desperate to get wins, because if they don't get wins, they're out. And Matthew Stafford would definitely help them out. Now, there's also another report out there that Aaron Rodgers supposedly reached out to the Giants to see if they were interested in signing him. So that's interesting. Now, when it comes to the quarterbacks right now, when comparing the two, there's pros and cons. Because if you were to acquire Aaron Rodgers, he's cheaper, and you don't have to give up any draft capital for him. But when it comes to getting Matthew Stafford, I think going forward, you'd want to have Matthew Stafford because you could probably get more than 1 year out of him. So, yeah, but he's going to cost a lot of money. And the Giants better not give up the 3rd pick if they end up acquiring him, if he ends up getting traded. They need to keep that pick. But, the Giants, look, you have Malik Neighbors, you have Tyrone Tracy. There's more that needs to be set over there. The offensive line is still a little shaky. Andrew Thomas, you got the left tackle. You just got to make sure that he's healthy. I also forgot about Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a good player too. But they need more on that side of the ball. It's the same thing with the Raiders. Now, I think the Giants are in a better position offensively than the Raiders are right now. But same with the Raiders, you need to add to that. Maybe they could get Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. How about that? I would sign up for that. Even though that would take up a large chunk of the cap. But, I think Matthew Stafford and Brian Dable working together, I think that could work. But again, kind of similar to the Raiders, look at the division. Dallas is going to be better. The Eagles and the Commanders just played in the championship game, and the Eagles just won the Super Bowl, who we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. If you stay out in the NFC West, you just won the division. The toughest competition is going to be the Niners. I think the Niners are going to bounce back. But it really is just all going to come down to money. And I think, Sean McVay, he was talking to Ryan Fitzpatrick and Andrew Whitworth recently on their podcast. He wants Matthew Stafford back. He wants him back. And they're going to figure it out. And he will be the quarterback of the Rams when we get to week 1 next year. But it's just one of those things that we're just going to have to keep playing that waiting game. It's the same thing that we did with Brandon Ayuk last year. Although a little bit different. But the Rams came that close to knocking off the Eagles. And I think it's only fitting that Stafford stays with the Rams. They run it back. And they try to get it done this time. But there's other teams out there that need quarterbacks. And I think Stafford, depending on what he does, now I could be wrong on this, but if Stafford ends up, if we get to the new league year and nothing happens with the other quarterbacks, if Stafford ends up getting signed and they restructure his contract and what have you, then I think that's when you'll start seeing the quarterback dominoes beginning to fall the rest of the way. Because now everyone's like, all right, Stafford is officially off the board. Let's see what we can do. And then you'll see Justin Fields and Sam Darnold and maybe Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. I could be wrong on that. And, teams might get impatient. They might say, hey, we've waited long enough. So it's very interesting. We'll see how this all plays out, but I've said it all along. Matthew Stafford is going to stay with the Rams. But the Giants and the Raiders are making a push to try to get him, so we'll see what ends up happening there. So we are going to take our next break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about what teams in Major League Baseball are primed to bounce back in 2025. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about some of the Major League Baseball teams that are looking to bounce back in 2025, and I think they will bounce back in 2025. So we'll start off with some of the teams in the American League. So I think one of the teams that a lot of people are choosing to bounce back, and I would agree, and that is the Texas Rangers. Now, if you remember, I feel like people forgot about this, and I don't blame you if you did, but the Rangers did win the World Series a couple of years ago. They did do that. They defeated the Diamondbacks, and, Corey Seager, World Series MVP, first World Series in franchise history, and then last year was just a major disappointment. Guys underperformed last year, especially Adolis Garcia, and I took him in fantasy, and because I could tell you, he was disappointing. But you also had some injuries. You had Josh Young, who got injured. Evan Carter missed some time as well. Corey Seager also got hurt. And it was a down year for them. They went 78-84. They finished 10.5 games behind the Astros in the American League West. And then, you got Jacob deGrom back late in the season. Now you're going to have a full year of him. They re-signed Nathan Eovaldi. Now, the one concern that I think, maybe Rangers fans will have is the bullpen, because the bullpen went through a metamorphosis. Is that even the right word to use? We'll just say major changes, because David Robertson is still a free agent. He was a part of that bullpen. Jose Leclerc, not in that bullpen anymore. And Kirby Yates just signed with the Dodgers. So that's a lot of arms that you lost. And they signed Chris Martin, Sean Armstrong, Hobie Milner, Jacob Webb, and Luke Jackson. That's what they signed for their bullpen. So Bruce Bochy, you still got him as the manager. He's going to have to figure it out, and I'm sure he will, because he's a Hall of Fame manager. And then they traded Nathaniel Lau, but they brought in Jake Berger. They signed Jock Peterson, and also they have Kyle Higashioka. They brought him as a backup catcher. So, I like the Berger and I like cheeseburgers. I like the Jake Berger signing. I like the Jock Peterson signing, to kind of bolster their lineup. And if you could get your players to stay healthy and, bounce back year from Adolis Garcia, and you got Corey Seager, and you keep him healthy, and you still got Marcus Semien, full year Jacob deGrom, I almost want to take the Rangers to win the AL West. Now, we will give our predictions, our division predictions as we move along here, but I almost do want to take them. But I do understand the concerns with the bullpen. So another team that I think will bounce back is the Boston Red Sox. I think the Red Sox are going to be a very good team this year. I like the moves that they've made this offseason as well. We talked about it earlier when I started doing the sports podcast here. And, we talked about, the Bregman signing. I like that. I think the lineup's going to be solid. You add Garrett Crochet. You add Walker Buehler, Patrick Sandoval. Guys that'll be in your rotation. And Walker Buehler pitched very well in the postseason. But, yeah, we got to see how he is now stretched out over the course of a full year. Because didn't really pitch a lot, with the regular season. Well, it wasn't very good in the regular season, but, he missed a lot of time with injury. So, we'll see how he is over the course of a full season. They did bring in a couple of former Yankees, Justin Wilson and Aroldis Chapman, for the bullpen, so we'll see how that goes. And they also signed Carlos Narvaez as well, catcher. But I like the Red Sox lineup going into the year. And I'll be honest, they were a thorn in the Yankees' side last year. And now they're going to be even better. So I think, they're a team that could maybe, push the Yankees for the division. You still got to respect the Orioles as well. But I think the Red Sox, I could definitely see them making the playoffs. I think this is the year they could get back. But, there's some, things going on with, Rafael Devers not wanting to change positions. But, I think Alex Cora is going to figure all that out. I think he's the right manager to say, no, we're going to do it this way. But, yeah, no, you got to like what the Red Sox have done. They finished at exactly 500. I think they're another team that you could see bouncing back. Now, another team that just missed out on the playoffs last year, and we'll take a look at the National League, A team that just missed out on the playoffs, lost the tiebreaker. They did finish with a winning record. They finished 89-73, and that is the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I love their rotation going into the year. The Corbin Burns signing, that was a surprise. And now you pair him with Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. And you also had Eduardo Rodriguez, who was kind of disappointing last year, right? He didn't have a good year. And Jordan Montgomery also did not have a good year. But that rotation is going to be pretty good for the Diamondbacks. And, I know we focus our attention on the Dodgers, but that rotation could definitely give the Dodgers problems going into 2025. Yeah, because right now, well, actually, Brandon Pfaadt, I'm looking at the projected starters. You also got Brandon Pfaadt as well. Actually, yeah, where is Jordan? Jordan Montgomery is still with the Diamondbacks. But yeah, he is still with the Diamondbacks. So, we'll see what happens with him. I'm looking now, tossing a bullpen session. This was recent. So, I guess, is he dealing with the injury right now? Oh, minor. Oh, working his way back from a minor finger injury. Okay. So, Diamondbacks got some depth with their rotation. So, we'll see how it all shapes out. But, and hopefully Corbin Carroll, he had a down second season. So, you hope that he bounces back. Let's see. I think that's a team that, they could definitely make the playoffs as well, especially with that rotation. I know the Cincinnati Reds are also another team that people are opening their eyes to. Now, I think the biggest reason, and I agree with this, is Terry Francona being the manager. I was surprised when he came out of retirement and now he's going to manage the Reds, because I thought he was done. But he still wants to manage, and I think he's going to do a great job. They had 77 wins last year. I think, I don't know what the over-under is for the Reds, but I think, they could definitely win more games with Francona as the manager. Ellie De La Cruz is one of the more exciting young players in the sport. And, they got some other young players as well that you're looking to see to take the next step. So, and the Central is a pretty weak division. The Brewers seem to own it, but at some point they're going to get knocked off. I'd maybe throw the Cubs in there too. I really like the Kyle Tucker move. And, they gave Craig Counsell a lot of money to turn this team around. So, maybe with Kyle Tucker, Shota Imanaga, he was solid for them last year. Let's see what they can do. So that's maybe another team you could throw in there. And then I think the Braves are going to bounce back this year. Maybe I'm going to be wrong. But, you had some down years from Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna getting hurt. Ozzie Albies was hurt. They dealt with a lot of injuries last year. They really had to, they were trading for Gio Urshela. They dealt with a ton of injuries. And even to their rotation as well. They lost Max Fried in free agency. They lost one of their relievers to the Mets. I think it was AJ Minter. But I think, they're going to get back to how they were before the injuries. I think guys will have better years, and then, of course, you get Acuna back, and then you're ready to roll. So I'm looking for the Braves to bounce back. I kind of looking at them as the team that I want to pick for the NL East. So, but I think that's pretty much it, though, with all the, unless there was another team. The Blue Jays, I know for some people, they're looking at them as a team that could bounce back, potentially. They signed Anthony Santander, which I think is huge for their lineup. I think they needed that kind of presence in that lineup. They were missing something. I think Vladdy should have a good year. Springer was a disappointment last year. I think he's starting to fade. Bo Bichette, he had a down year last year. See if he bounces back. I know they signed Max Scherzer to their rotation. They got an older rotation. So we'll see how it fares. But I think that's pretty much it. with the teams I have. The Mariners could be a team. They have a very good rotation. It's just their offense was a problem last year. So, if they can get the hitting and the pitching on the same page, they could be a very good team. But, yeah, I think that's it for the most part. We'll dive more into the teams. We're going to break down each division and which team, I'm going to have winning it, and, look at, I'll do like playoff predictions, or who I have, coming out of the wild cards, and then maybe a World Series prediction in there as well. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think, though. What teams do you think will bounce back in 2025? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show now, and then when we come back, we will take a look at the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, an overview on their season and what they got planned for the offseason, what they're going to have to do. There's not really much because, they just won the Super Bowl. But we'll get into it, who's a free agent, things like that, what they could address in the draft and what have you. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to now get into the Eagles season overview, the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So, going into the year, I did say that this team, how it was structured, and the moves that they made, I said this is going to be a team, I wouldn't be surprised if you see this team be the team similar to what we saw a couple years ago and before the collapse in 2023. And we got that and then some, because they went on and they won the Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts said it in that soundbite that you've probably seen, that, when they were talking as the Super Bowl was coming to an end, that he was the missing piece. And he definitely was. Now, it was more than just Saquon. When you look at the additions that they made through the draft and through free agency, particularly when you look on the defensive side of the ball, because the biggest reason why the Eagles won the Super Bowl, now Barkley helped propel them there, but the Eagles' defense was the biggest reason that they won. Their secondary with the young guys, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, and then an under the radar signing in Zach Bond, who's a free agent, who the Eagles got to try to bring back. Now, if they don't, that is going to be a position that they could address in the draft. You got a couple of guys. You got Josh Sweat, who's a free agent. You got Zach Bond, who's a free agent. Milton Williams, I believe, is a free agent as well, one of their other interior linemen. So those are some areas that could need some addressing when we get to the draft, and unless they bring him back. Now, the Eagles do not have a ton of cap space. Now, like I've been saying, they could do some restructuring. But let's look at who they have for free agents. other free agents. So James Bradbury's a free agent. You figure he's probably gone. Josh Sweat. Actually, James Bradbury didn't even play at all for the team. But yeah, you got Josh Sweat. Brandon Graham is going to retire unless he comes back, which I don't think he is. But then you have Zach Bond, who's going to get a big contract. He was up for Defensive Player of the Year. If the Eagles don't get him, whoever signs him, that's a pretty good signing. Mekhi Becton is also a free agent. Vontae Maddox, Milton Williams. Orlin Burks, another linebacker. So linebacker definitely, yeah, and then you got another linebacker as well, Ben Van Sumerman. Yeah, no, linebacker could definitely be a position that they address in the draft. And then in terms of their current cap space, it's around $22 million. That's at least what I have on overthecap.com. So yeah, some restructuring. I know Darius Slay, could be a player that, ends up going elsewhere. He either wants to play in Philadelphia or finish up his career in Detroit, which is where he was previously. But yeah, listen, this was a great year for them. And coming off of a year last year, or 2 years ago now, where there was a lot of questions because you also lost two leaders on your team in Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce, and you didn't know how that was going to be replaced. Well, it was replaced okay because you had Jalen Carter, who had a huge sack in the divisional round against the Rams, but, made his presence felt all year, was a force up the middle for them. And then Cam Jurgens did a great job, in his first year, filling in for Kelce, or taking Kelce's spot. And, you signed Barkley. Barkley had an unbelievable season, came within 100 yards of breaking Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. And had he would have played against the Giants the final game, if the Eagles had something to play for, he would have played and probably would have broke it, but didn't happen. It's okay. He has a chance to break it next year. But that was the signing of the offseason, was Saquon Barkley. And, I don't think if they didn't have Barkley, I don't think they're making it all the way to the Super Bowl. Barkley really was a difference maker. He had, 6 or 7 runs of 60-plus yards, whatever that stat is. I mean, he was unbelievable. But that's what happens when you put this generational talent behind the generational offensive line. That's the best offensive line he has ever run behind, and it really showed, which is why you saw all the big runs that he had. And he really didn't do anything in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, that was the one good thing that the Chiefs did, was they held Saquon in check, but it didn't matter. And, Jalen Hurts, did he have a huge year? No, but in the playoffs, he shined. In the Super Bowl, he shined. And the championship game, he was also good as well. But he didn't turn the ball over. He turned the ball over once in the Super Bowl, and that was it. Jalen Hurts has a Super Bowl. And, it's still very hard to rank him because, he doesn't put up huge numbers during the regular season. But you know what? He's part of a team that wins games, and he contributes. They don't get to the Super Bowl without Jalen Hurts either. There's some people out there that'll say he's a system quarterback. He's not. You put some of these other quarterbacks in that situation, in that game, in that Super Bowl. I don't know if every single I don't know if all these quarterbacks that you could probably put in the Eagles situation would have done what Jalen Hurts did. And, they could have made mistakes. Jalen Hurts did make a mistake, but you know what? That didn't faze him. Some quarterbacks, if that happened, they would have crumbled. They would have crumbled. And it could have been a different outcome. But Jalen Hurts, he didn't blink after that interception. And it wasn't a historic Super Bowl performance, but it was good enough. And he won Super Bowl MVP. And you can't take that away from him. In an era right now where it's all Patrick Mahomes. And then the other teams that have won were teams that had quarterbacks from the previous era, Jalen Hurts was the first one to break through and be the first quarterback in this new era to win a Super Bowl other than Patrick Mahomes. And there's got to be something to be said about that. You can't take that away from him. And you look at the Eagles, and we've talked about this. Can they become the next dynasty? It's very premature to say, but they definitely can. They definitely can. If they can keep this core together, there's no reason why they can't do it. Now, of course, there's going to be other teams that are going to have something to say about it. But, I mean, they're going to be a tough team to beat. Because at some point, Saquon Barkley's going to fall off. This offensive line is not always going to be stout. Lane Johnson at some point is going to hang it up. He's the last one, from the Kelsey, the Jason Kelsey days. Actually, I mean, I don't know why I said it like that, but, Lane Johnson's been around for a long time. And Jason Kelsey was around for a long time. Now they're gone. Well, Jason Kelsey's gone. Lane Johnson's really, one of the last remaining members from, I guess, the previous Super Bowl that they won. And, you got A.J. Brown and you got Devontae Smith, but are you going to be able to keep both of them? The corners, when their contracts are up and they're going to want huge paydays, they're going to be able to keep everybody? No. But they are a very well-run organization. They may lose guys, but they'll bring in more talent. So, we'll see what happens. Anthony in the chat, a couple of things he had to say. You know how the NFLPA announced after the Sam Bradford incident that they're going to have a rookie wage scale? Did they announce if they're going to do a quarterback wage scale for salary? I am not 100% sure about that. I would have to look that up. And then he also said, I don't think so. I think the Eagles are going to be one of these teams that is going to win a Super Bowl but not make it again. They'll make it to the NFC Championship game but not the Super Bowl. Listen, it's very hard to make it 2 times in a row. The Chiefs have done it. Well, they made it to the Super Bowl 3 times in a row. The Patriots, same thing. It's not normal for teams to do that. But you kind of look at the landscape of the NFC. There's very few teams that you could really make the argument are better than the Eagles. Right now, the Eagles are the best team because they just won it. But you look at their roster from top to bottom, you're going to put them at number 1. The Lions, I really would have loved to have seen a healthy Lions team take on the Eagles in the playoffs. How would that have played out? We'll find out if they play in week 1. But I would have loved to have seen that. I think the 49ers are going to bounce back. And then, I thought, look, the Rams came very close to beating them. But also the Packers. If the Packers showed some kind of a passing game against the Eagles, and they didn't turn it over to start off the game that led to 7 points, I thought the Packers defense kept them in the game. I give the Packers some respect too. I think if the Vikings had to go there, I think it would have been similar to what we got. Based off what we saw the last couple of weeks from them, I think it would have been what we saw, the first time the Eagles got to the year the Eagles got to the Super Bowl and won it the first time. It would have been a blowout because that defensive line would have ate up Sam Darnold. And we'll see what they do next year at quarterback. And then the Commanders, look, the Commanders played them tough. The NFC Championship game got out of hand. But, we'll see if they have something to say. They're going to be even better. The Cowboys, I know Dak has good numbers against the Eagles, but, the Eagles are the superior team right now. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, listen, they've owned the Eagles the last couple of years. Jalen Hurts' playoff losses are to Patrick Mahomes and to Tampa. So, we'll see what happens. Anthony also said, I think there's going to be a Super Bowl hangover. I think they lose the first game of the season. Well, we don't even know who they're playing yet. We have no idea who they're playing yet. Let's see who they're playing first, and then we could decide, all right, are they going to win or lose this game? But if they're playing the Lions, we'll see. We are so far away from that, but they're not. We got to see who they're playing against first before we decide who they're going to lose to. if they're going to lose the first game. So that is pretty much it for the show for today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Appreciate the comments from you, Anthony, as always. We'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to this video. And until next time, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.